There are moments in a life, moments so quiet and so pure that they don't announce themselves when they arrive. They just settle over you like warm light through a window on a winter afternoon. This is one of those stories, not a loud story, not a dramatic one exactly, just a true one. The kind that reminds you why kindness, real kindness, is the most powerful thing one human being can offer another. So settle in, take a breath, and let me tell you about a man named Daniel Hartwell, his daughter Lily, and the night that changed everything for both of them. Daniel was 47 years old, though most mornings he felt closer to 60. He had the kind of face that had been handsome once, and still was, really, if you looked carefully enough. Dark hair threaded through with silver at the temples, a short, neat beard that had gone gray in patches, the way a good man's beard does when he's carried a lot without complaining. His eyes were a steady, thoughtful brown, the kind of eyes that had seen hardship and had chosen, deliberately, not to become hard because of it. He worked as a senior HVAC technician at Callaway Merritt Industries, a large commercial property management firm based out of Cincinnati. He had worked there for 19 years. He knew every boiler, every duct, every stubborn thermostat in every building the company managed. He wore his uniform with quiet pride, showed up early, stayed late, and never once in 19 years asked for anything he hadn't earned. What most people at Callaway Merritt didn't know, because Daniel didn't talk about himself much, was that he was raising a daughter entirely on his own. Lily was 11 years old. She had her mother's brown hair, which she wore pulled back most days in a practical ponytail. She had Daniel's steady eyes and his quiet way of observing the world before deciding what she thought of it. She was the kind of child who remembered the names of every adult she'd ever met, who thanked bus drivers and grocery clerks without being reminded, who once spent an entire Saturday afternoon helping an elderly neighbor look for a lost cat, even though the cat turned out to have simply been sleeping behind the dryer the entire time. Lily's mother, Carol, had passed away when Lily was 4, a sudden illness, the kind that doesn't give you time to prepare. Daniel had been, in the years since, both parents at once. He packed lunches and attended school plays. He learned to braid hair from a YouTube video, practicing on a doll for 2 weeks before he attempted it on Lily's actual head. He worked overtime when the bills stacked up and took on fewer hours when Lily needed him home. He was not a perfect father. He was something better than that. He was a present one. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday in November. It came through the company's internal email system, sent to every employee at Callaway Merritt, the annual Winter Gala, black tie, the Grand Ellsworth Hotel downtown, a celebration of the company's 40th anniversary. Most of the technicians laughed about it in the break room. Marcus, who worked alongside Daniel on the commercial accounts, held the printed email up like it was written in a foreign language. "You going to this thing, Danny?" he said, grinning. "Thinking about it," Daniel said, pouring his coffee. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "These things aren't really for us, you know that, right? It's for the executives, the clients. They send the invite to everybody, but nobody expects the guys in the field to actually show up." Daniel folded the email neatly and tucked it into his shirt pocket. Maybe somebody should. The truth was, he'd had a different reason for considering it. Lily had been going through a shy phase at school. She was struggling to feel like she belonged, the way children sometimes do at that particular age when everything feels too big and too uncertain. Daniel had been looking for an opportunity to show her something. He wasn't entirely sure what, just something about showing up, about walking into a room where you feel out of place and standing there anyway, with your chin up and your heart open. He called his mother, who agreed to help Lily get dressed. He rented a tuxedo from a shop on Maple Street, the kind of shop that still had a courteous older gentleman who helped you get the fit right without making you feel rushed. He let Lily pick out her own outfit, and she chose, with complete confidence, a small black suit with a crisp white shirt and a clip-on bow tie, because she had seen a photograph once of Audrey Hepburn, and had decided that was the only reasonable way to dress for an elegant occasion. She looked, Daniel thought when he saw her standing in the hallway that evening, absolutely perfect. "You look like a movie star," he told her. She straightened her bow tie with great seriousness. "You look like a movie star's dad," she said, which she intended as a compliment, and he received it as one. They arrived at the Grand Ellsworth at 7 o'clock. The ballroom was extraordinary. Crystal chandeliers hung from a ceiling that seemed to go on forever, casting warm golden light over everything below. Round tables dressed in white linen. Flowers. soft music from a string quartet in the far corner. Men in black tuxedos stood in clusters, talking with the easy confidence of people who were entirely comfortable in rooms like this. Daniel felt for a moment the familiar sensation of being in the wrong place. It passed. He put his hand on Lily's shoulder, and she looked up at him, and he smiled, and they walked in together. They found seats at a table near the back. A few people glanced at them. Some looked away quickly. A couple of the executives, Daniel recognized from the office, gave him polite nods that meant nothing in particular. No one was unkind. No one was exactly kind either. They were simply uninterested. And then, about 30 minutes into the evening, Daniel heard laughter from a nearby table. He didn't catch all of it, just fragments. His name. Something about the boiler room, something about it being funny, the idea of a technician at a black tie event. He kept his expression calm. He had had a lot of practice keeping his expression calm. But Lily heard it too. She was quiet for a moment, the way she got when she was thinking carefully about something. Then she set down her glass of sparkling water, folded her small hands on the table, and looked at her father with those steady eyes. "Daddy," she said in her clear, unhurried voice, "you're the most important person in this whole building, aren't you?" It wasn't a question. Daniel looked at her. "What makes you say that, sweetheart?" "Because," she said simply, "you're the one who keeps everybody warm." What neither Daniel nor Lily knew in that moment was that the woman sitting at the adjacent table had heard every word. Her name was Margaret Calloway Merritt. She was 53 years old, the CEO of the company her father had founded, and she was, by most accounts, an extraordinarily capable and deeply private woman. She had dark hair, cut short and precise. She held herself with the particular stillness of someone who had learned, over many years, to keep her reactions close. Her arms were often folded. Her expression was often unreadable. She had built her reputation on exactness, on metrics and performance reviews and strategic planning. She was respected in the way that highly competent, somewhat distant people are respected, which is to say, completely and a little fearfully. She had laughed earlier in the evening at something one of her vice presidents had said. She had not been the one making the joke about the technician, but she had been at the table where it was made, and she had not stopped it. That was the thing sitting with her when she heard Lily's voice. "You're the one who keeps everybody warm." Margaret set down her glass. She turned just slightly to look at the table where a man in a rented tuxedo sat with his daughter in a small black suit and a clip-on bow tie. She looked at the girl's face, so earnest and so certain. She looked at the man's face, the careful way he was composing himself, the way his hand rested on his daughter's back with a tenderness that was entirely unself-conscious. Something moved in Margaret Calloway Merritt's chest, something old and quiet and persistent. Her own father had been a working man. She had sometimes forgotten that, in the years of building and managing and expanding, she realized with a clarity that was both sudden and slow, spent quite a long time in rooms like this one without ever really asking herself who made them possible. She stood up. Her vice president looked up, surprised. She walked to Daniel's table. Daniel looked up when he saw her approach and recognized her immediately. He started to rise from his chair, the reflex of a man who'd always been taught to show respect. "Please," she said with a small gesture of her hand. "Don't." She pulled out the empty chair across from him and sat down. For a moment she didn't say anything. She looked at Lily, who looked back at her with the same calm, assessing gaze she always used on adults she hadn't yet decided about. "That was a remarkable thing you just said," Margaret told her. Lily considered this. "It's just true," she said. Margaret nodded slowly. "Yes," she said, "it is." She turned to Daniel then. Her voice was quieter than it was in board meetings, less precise around the edges. "Mr. Hartwell," she said, "I know your name from the service records, 19 years. Some of the most consistent performance reviews in the department." She paused. "I'm sorry I don't know more about you than that." Daniel held her gaze steadily. "It's a big company," he said, "not unkind, just honest." "It is," she agreed. "That's not a good excuse." Another pause. "I heard what was said at the other table. I should have said something." Daniel shook his head slightly. "You don't need to." "I'd like to," she said simply. And so they sat there, the CEO and the technician and the girl in the clip-on bow tie, in the middle of a grand ballroom full of chandeliers and carefully dressed people, and they talked, not about the company particularly, about other things, about Cincinnati winters and the particular challenge of keeping older buildings warm, about Lily's school project on architecture, about the string quartet playing in the corner, and whether the older gentleman on the cello looked like he was enjoying himself or merely enduring it. He was, Lily determined after careful observation, genuinely happy. You could tell by his feet. People who are happy always keep rhythm with their feet, even when they think no one's watching. Margaret laughed at that, a real laugh, the kind that surprised her a little. Before the evening ended, Margaret asked Daniel a question. "Would you be willing," she said, "to be part of a working group I'm forming about company culture, about how the different parts of the organization actually experience their work?" She looked at him carefully. "I need people who will tell me the truth." Daniel was quiet for a moment. In his pocket, folded neatly, was the original invitation. He thought about the break room, about Marcus holding it up and laughing. "Yes," he said, "I'd be willing to do that." Margaret nodded. She reached into her jacket and produced a card, the old-fashioned kind with embossed lettering, and slid it across the table. Then she looked at Lily. "You," she said with warmth that was new in her voice, "are going to be just fine in this world." Lily straightened her bow tie. "I know," she said serenely, "but thank you for saying so." On the drive home that night, Lily fell asleep in the back seat before they'd even left downtown. Daniel drove slowly, the city lights sliding past the windows, the heater running steadily, the way he'd always made sure the heaters ran for the people who needed them. He thought about his daughter's voice in that ballroom, clear and certain. "You're the one who keeps everybody warm." He thought about Carol, and how she would have laughed at the story of the clip-on bow tie, how she would have been so proud of their girl. He thought about Margaret Calloway Merritt's face in the moment before she laughed, something shifting in it, something deciding to be softer. He thought about how rarely we tell the people around us what they actually mean, how we assume they know, how they often don't. He thought about showing up, about walking into rooms where you feel uncertain and standing there with your heart open anyway, about how that is perhaps the single most courageous, ordinary thing a person can do. The working group met for the first time in January. Daniel wore his uniform. He'd been invited to wear something else, but he'd thought about it and decided the uniform was honest, and honesty was the point. He told the truth, the way he'd been asked to, about what the work actually felt like, day to day, about the things that made it dignified and the things that made it harder than it needed to be, about what it meant to a person to be seen, to be called by their name, to have someone ask how they were and wait for the actual answer. Other people told the truth too, quietly, in that room. It was the kind of conversation that doesn't happen often enough in organizations, or in families, or between neighbors, for the simple reason that it requires someone to go first. Daniel had always been good at going first. Some stories end with large changes, new policies, dramatic gestures, things you can point to and say, "There, that is where everything shifted." This one ends more quietly than that. It ends with a man driving home through a Cincinnati winter with his daughter asleep in the back seat, with a woman sitting alone in her office for a few minutes longer than necessary, thinking about her father and what he would have thought of the company he'd started, with a girl who would grow up knowing, because she had been taught by example, that showing up matters, that kindness is not weakness, that the truth said simply and clearly in a small voice in a grand room can make even the most composed person go very still. You're the one who keeps everybody warm. That's a thing worth remembering, whatever room you're in tonight, whatever you do for the people around you, whether anyone in a tuxedo notices or not. Someone, somewhere, is warmer because of what you do. Don't let yourself forget that.